Welcome to Business Success Tips, where you learn to make more money in less time and have a lot more fun. I'm your host, Paul Sanneman. I'm founder of Contractor Staffing Source, where we help contractors build great teams. My guest today is Ryan Shank from ShareWillow. And I guess you're good at building great teams too, huh? You share that with us, right? So you employ incentives. So explain to me what employee incentives for a contractor are, how a contractor could use them. I think they're a good idea, but I'm not sure I understand them either. So go for it.
Yeah. So firstly, thank you so much for having me on. So ShareWillow, we help contractors create and manage employee incentive plans. What that means is it can range anywhere from a profit sharing plan, just like a global company profit sharing plan, but most of our customers are creating incentive plans. So if I'm a contractor, an HVAC contractor, I want to create incentives based on number of callbacks, based on number of hours per job, materials used per job. There's a bunch of different KPIs that I
Right.
care about as a business owner, and I want to then incentivize my technicians, my employees, on those same KPIs. So that's what we do we'll pull them directly out of Service Titan, House Call Pro, Builder Trend, whatever software platforms they're using. But we're creating incentives so that you don't just have these hourly workers that don't care about the success of the business and then don't ultimately deliver a great customer experience.
Okay. Now that sounds like a good idea, but it sounds really complicated because I'm thinking about this. I mean, everybody says, "Oh, I'd love to do that." And usually they give a $100 bill when they do something cash. They have no, they've not figured it out very well. So can you
Yeah.
explain to me, let's say I'm a small, I'm a roofing contractor, or just pick one, right? I'm doing
Yep.
3 million a year and I want to incentivize my employees to get the job done quicker, at least within the budget I've given them, right?
For
I
sure.
want to have not many callbacks, and I'm going to get a 5-star Google review. All right. So, how could I have incentivized my employees to do that performance?
So the first thing that I actually want to focus on is the callbacks. So I just want to emphasize how much or how important callbacks are to a business. So let's say you live in Charlotte, North Carolina, and you service up to an hour away as your radius, right? Your service area. Imagine you complete a job, you think it's done, you're going to dispatch your crews for the next job. But oh no, you get a phone call. Hey, if it's a roofing, hey, I'm getting a leak right here, or oh, this wasn't done. You have to go back out to the job. That means instead of going to a new paying job, paying thousands of dollars in new revenue, you have to drive an hour away, stop for gas, stop at Chick-fil-A if it's not a Sunday, get some
Right.
food. You have to go fix the job, then drive an hour back, stop at Chick-fil-A again. That's going to be a 4 or 5 hour day just to go back to the job. That is the deadly part of callbacks. Okay. So the first thing that a lot of these contractors are doing is they want a specific callback percentage. Most of them want it under 10%. Okay. Under 5% is great. So the first thing you're going to do is say, if your callback percentage in this month or this quarter is under 10%, you're going to get a bonus. You're going to get another $500. You're going to get another $1,000, right? So there's going to be
Now,
a
how do
portion
they
of it.
actually get? How do they actually get the money, Ryan? I mean, they get it in their paycheck. How do
They get in
they?
their paycheck. They get in their paycheck. Yeah, direct deposit, paycheck. Just the same way that they get paid typically. Um,
And how
so
does
so
that
tip,
show up on their paycheck? Just curious. What is it? Your bonus is, or how does that show up?
Yeah, so it's going to be paid out as taxable income. It's a
Right.
bonus or commission as the category. And yeah, so it's basically it's incentive pay. So it's the variable pay. Just like sales guys get commission, this is the
Right.
variable
Right.
pay, but more for the whole team. Okay. So callbacks is a massive component. And so a lot of times maybe that could be half of it. Then the other half could be, all right, I know that this job, if it's a roofing, job, 2,000 square feet, whatever it is, I know it should take 8 hours, right? So if they come in 8 hours or under, they get another piece, right? If they come in over, they get clawed back, right? So there's going to be duration, then there's going to be callbacks, and then and it could be average of all of your roofing jobs, right? And then it's going to be, let's say you want reviews as your last piece, right? So there's three components, three KPIs in this particular plan that we're talking about. So I'm going to take all the jobs for that month or that quarter. I'm going to say, what was my callback percentage? What was my average number of hours per job? But again, you don't just want them to do a quick job and do a poor job. So then you also have the customer reviews as the piece that ensures customer happiness. So did I get 5-star reviews? I want 100% of my jobs to have a review, and I want 100% of them to have a 5-star review. So if I only got 80% of my jobs and an average of a 4-star review, I get a little piece called back as well, or I get less. I get less of the possible max bonus. So that is a way that you can do it. And all of that data, by the way, is already getting tracked in Service Titan, in House Call Pro, in Jobber. So what we're doing is we're taking the data that you already have and we're creating incentive plans around it to help you optimize and improve those metrics.
Now, I'm assuming, Ryan, you really can't take away from their base pay, but you can take away from their bonus, right? So let's say I'm assuming here that they got less than 10% callbacks.
Mm-hmm.
And they would get the jobs done in a reasonable time, but they got like no Google reviews. So
Yep.
they would that would kill their bonus. They wouldn't take anything away from them
Of
from
course
their
not.
normal
Of course not.
paycheck.
So exactly. So you start with a potential max bonus. So it's like, all right, you have a potential max bonus of, let's say, $2,000 for this quarter. And then
Right.
based on those three different things, if I did my less than 10% callbacks, I got the 5-star reviews, I could get 100% of it. But if one of those I didn't reach 100%, then let's say it could only be 90% of my potential max bonus, right? So I'd get
Right.
90% of the 2K, I'd get 9 times 2, I'd get 180 or 1800.
And so they're going to get feedback on where they hit on all these KPIs, right?
Exactly, of course. Yeah, yeah. So with ShareWillow, we provide the dashboard, we provide the visibility, the transparency, so they can see progress towards goal. They can see where they're at. They can see when they've like done it, where they're at. So there's no, like at the end of the year, so a lot of times it's like you thought you were going to get a bonus, and then you're like, what the heck? I didn't get it, and you're kind of pissed.
Right.
That's what we're trying to avoid. And also, when that happens, like the behavior wasn't influenced by the bonus. It's sort of found money. It's not actually like
Well, no, I mean,
doing
I agree.
anything to
Annual
drive
bonuses do
behavior.
nothing because what happens is sort of like if you give people a turkey every year and stop giving it to them, they're going to be pissed because they didn't get their
There's
turkey.
expected.
But
Yeah, yeah, there's
there's no,
expected.
the time between the event and the reinforcement, if it's longer than about 30 days, it isn't going to matter, right?
Exactly. Exactly. We always say that. We want to tie the reward to the behavior so that it actually reinforces it.
Right. Because I use the example, you have a rat running around in a maze, right? And it goes the wrong direction twice, then you shock it the third time. It has no idea how to learn, right? But if you shock it the minute it makes a wrong turn and give it a, whatever, a carrot the minute it makes a right turn, then
Yeah.
you're going to train it a lot faster. I mean, I hate to kill people with rats, but you know what I mean? It's just
No, I know.
basically
Yeah.
behavioral training, right? The
Yeah.
faster you get to reinforcement, the more positive reinforcement, the easier it is to change behavior. And this is all about changing employee behavior, from my understanding, right?
It's about it's about aligning employee behavior, to be honest, right? Because your employees that do really, really great work, they deserve and they want an upside. A lot of times people just want to be in a system that actually rewards them. So that's what this is doing. And by the way, we didn't come up with this, right? This is what all the top contractors are doing. I was at a trade show called ACA. It's Air Conditioning Contractors of America. And Tommy Mello, he runs a $220 million top line garage door company, $60 million EBITDA. He's talking about how his business completely transformed when he introduced performance pay and employee incentives that were tied to KPIs. I was talking to another guy that has a massive HVAC company outside of Washington, D.C., another 220 trucks. I forget how much revenue they're doing, but he was saying like this is the only way to pay the actual employees and the technicians, right? Because otherwise, they're going to show up late. They're going to just, they're going to not do the job. I was talking to this one guy and he said it was taking him like 2 to 3 days to do a new install for like a multifamily heating and air conditioning unit. And then once he introduced performance pay and employee incentives, it took him half a day. right? So the time is getting reduced. And ultimately, at the end of the day, what happens with that is the customers get a better experience. The customers don't have to stay home for 2 to 3 days. They get it
Right.
done quickly. They get it done right. They don't want to call you back and have callbacks. You know what I mean? They don't want that. They want it done.
No, right. I totally agree with the principle. And I've been doing coaching for, I don't know, 50 years. My
Yep.
problem in smaller companies was even to get them to have KPIs for the employees. They just, show up and do a good job. So how do you get the smaller contractor, let's say under 20 employees, not a big guy,
Yep.
um,
Yep.
to actually develop KPIs? Because a lot of these guys don't even have them, right? You ask them,
Yeah.
do you have KPIs for an employee? And they say, what's a KPI? Key performance indicator. Oh, they just do a good job. We're good.
Yeah. So look, to be honest, I think a lot of these guys, and I'm sure you're seeing this, are starting to get more sophisticated as there's a whole ecosystem of coaches and online communities, and there's kind of like the home service influencers that are sort of preaching stuff. So I do think that the industry is sort of progressing into getting a little bit more sophisticated in terms of that. I think at the end of the day, it's like you don't have to over engineer it, right? It could literally be revenue. It could be revenue, it could be profit margin, and it could be like callbacks, or it could be like number of reviews. You could literally manually just look at your Google listing. How many reviews do you have? You know what I mean? How many jobs did you have to go back to versus the total number of jobs? Like it could be so simple, but I think, a lot of these guys are they're buying or subscribing to pricing books, and they starting to look at margin, whether even if it's just in QuickBooks, right? So I think
Right.
having some type of KPI and goal or threshold of like a margin percentage, and then understanding. I think a lot of I'm in a lot of these Facebook groups where a lot of contractors are sort of talking about their business, and a lot of them understand that labor is a big lever to increasing margin, right? And
Right.
number of
Well,
hours per
basically,
job.
you can control your the cost of your materials, but it's all about the labor, right? It's
Exactly.
profitability.
Exactly. And I think a lot of them too, hey, can I attach a service plan or a maintenance plan onto these jobs, right? So it's like if you can understand, just a few things, you don't have to go crazy KPI and be super, in the weeds. But I think, at the end of the day, like, is your revenue going up? And then what kind of factors into that? How do I get more revenue? Well, it's more jobs. And it's like, do I need leads? So you can kind of look at the funnel to really understand what happens. And what we say is like, look, don't over engineer it, especially with your incentive plans. Don't over engineer it, right? A couple different things that are big levers for your business, and if you build incentives around them, they will improve.
Okay. So also, I mean, usually salespeople are incentivized. That's easy. Some percentage of what you do is commission, and that's most companies understand how to incentivize salespeople, but they don't understand how to incentivize the rest of the workers. That is an issue for them. So when you're
Exactly. Yep.
working with a company, and I don't care, let's take a remodeling company. How do you incentivize a remodeling company?
Yeah, so a lot of times with a remodeling company, they bid out the job. So firstly, there's an estimator, there's a project manager, and then typically there's like the carpenter and the technicians and the crews. So a lot of
Right.
times there's different departments that have different KPIs that they're bonused on or they're incentivized on.
Mhm.
So firstly, if I'm an estimator or a salesperson, how many jobs did I win? How many estimates did I have to submit to actually win a paying job? So that could be, one KPI right there. Also the CSR, like what is my booking rate to even book an estimate, right? Is it 80%? Is it
Right.
60%? The project managers then, right? So they bidded the job based on a certain margin. So a lot of times the project managers will have a margin threshold that they need to hit. Like, guys, we bidded this job at 22% margin. We have to come in at 22% or else you're not going to get anything. Right. And then a lot of times the labor, it could be anything. It could just be like attendance. It could be, and a lot of times with a remodeling job, it's a job-based bonus. So a lot of times with,
Right.
plumbing, electrical, HVAC, it's rolled up monthly or quarterly for all the jobs. But if it's a bigger job, let's say it's a $300,000, beautiful kitchen remodel in Greenwich, Connecticut,
Right.
right? And it's going to take, 4 to 6 weeks. You're going to get an incentive on that particular job. And each person is probably going to have different KPIs that they're responsible for. Again, not over engineering it. Project manager, come in at 18%, come in at 22%. If I'm a technician, it's like,
How do
look,
you, let's say, how do you, I mean, the problem is so subcontractors are by definition have KPIs because they got a fixed budget, right? That's not a problem.
Yep.
The problem
Yep.
with the contractor is everybody who's not a subcontractor, and it's your self-performed stuff that gets you in trouble because,
Hmm.
the framer is supposed to frame a door in 4 hours and it takes him five, or frame windows, or what, on the self-performance in my opinion, when it comes to remodeling contractors, you're in trouble because they got no way to judge. They just say, go out there and get it done as fast as you can. And it generally
Hmm.
doesn't work great. So you can put KPIs like the project manager with the margin would be, let's say they're self-performing the carpentry or they're self-performing, any part of it, like the framing or something. Then
Yep.
you can put a KPI on it's supposed to be framed in X amount of days. It's supposed to pay X dollars a foot. I mean, you can put some kind of key performance indicator on the actual, your labor cost that you bid versus what it actually cost you. Is that true?
Your what you bid versus what it actually cost. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So, for example, I can
Exactly.
say, okay, I have got pick a number, you know, 30, $10 a foot labor in framing this house, whatever number I've got, right?
Yep.
And so if it costs me $12 a foot, that's bad. If I get in for $9 a foot, hooray, right? And I could tie
Hmm.
that to the guys framing the house and come up with a number, right? So I can pay them according to what they're doing. Because unfortunately, if you're on piecework, it's not an issue, it's automatic. But most of remodeling companies, nobody's on piecework. Everybody's on hourly, right? Which
Right.
is the
Right.
problem.
Right. So this is hourly. This is a blended, right? So this is going to be hourly plus a variable piece.
Right. And I think what's happened is there's a lot of people who are on piecework and people, well, they don't get it well done. They work too fast. And
Yep.
unfortunately, most remodeling contractors are all based on hourly labor, right? And they don't even have a piecework incentive. So lots of times, I've seen this happen before. You sure have too. Is as work slows down, people take longer to get it done, right?
Yeah.
As
Yeah.
well, we don't know where the next job is. Maybe we can take a couple weeks on this one so we can stall until the next one starts, right? I'm sure that
Yeah, and
happens.
that's why I think, what we see is that like there's a certain number of hours by category. Like the door framer should take this many hours, and then you try to incentivize them based on those number of hours. Or by the way, if you bidded it out based on hours of all of these different functions of that project and it's different, like then maybe you misbid it, so that's why it also then will come back to the person that actually bid out for the job,
Right.
the estimator. It's like, was there a difference in cost? Like maybe you bid it wrong, right? Maybe you thought that that's what was happening, but it wasn't happening.
Now, I'm
um
assuming this would work just as well for some subcontractors like electricians and plumbers and framers that aren't on piecework, which most of them aren't, at least electricians and
Most of our customers are what you're calling the sub, like are the subs. It is
really.
like the HVAC, the electrical. So think of a company that's using Service Titan, for their work. Like, we have 100 employee or 100 technician HVAC companies, big plumbing companies, electrical companies, garage door, pool cleaners, pest control. Like those companies are most of our customers, not like the GCs.
Right. But I can see it would apply if it's just a mindset that's getting invoked to that. Because you look at the software, I mean, obviously, there's a lot of software for technical companies like you mentioned, but new ones like Buildertrend, JobTread, and it's now becoming more prevalent in project management for like remodeling companies and building companies. So they can, I think, if you can, have an API that ties into that, then you can also
Yep.
use those kind of software, right?
Exactly. And that's where I think the most value of ShareWillow comes is when, you're pulling the data automatically from those software platforms that you're already using. And then we're basically building and creating all of the logic and the formulas, and then basically giving your technicians and all of your employees, a beautiful dashboard to have visibility and transparency into these plans.
Okay.
But it's the data feeding into it is a key component.
All right. Now, if they have a software that's feeding the data, they're not using it, then what does it cost for your service?
It's about $10 per employee per month, right? So if our
Okay.
average customer is 25 employees, $250 a month.
Okay. And so they probably make that up in one day. I would assume, right?
Yes, exactly. If they have one additional job, then they're going to be able to make it up.
Okay. So it seems to me that makes a lot of sense. So how do people get in touch with you?
You go to ShareWillow. Go to ShareWillow, sharewillow.com, or Ryan at sharewillow.com is the best way.
Okay. And so they can get a hold of you and you'll walk them through how they can develop the KPIs, how they can put the dashboard together and put the whole system together for them, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So we also have an optional plan design service. And we basically will almost take a white glove consultative approach. That's 3K. And we'll basically set up all of the plans for them, all the integrations, and set them up on ShareWell. It's completely optional. But yeah, so we have the option to do that as well.
Okay, great. So I would think if you're not using some form of employee incentive, this is a great place to start. So give Ryan a call. I think you'll find it money and time well spent. Thanks for being
Absolutely.
here, Ryan.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate you.